He'd take me on his motorcycle when I was 5 years old, seat me behind him, say, "Hold on," and off we went. 5 years old. I'm sure I didn't dare to even feel scared. The problem was being a girl. I should have been a boy. Just like in the army. If I didn't feel right, I was out of line. One day, I told one of his subordinates, my eyes bright with admiration, that my father was very cruel. An army hike. My father was the commander, and he took me along. I must have been 8 at the time. We spent the night on the edge of the cliff at Kaukab El Hawa in the Jordan Valley. The soldiers slept in tents or sleeping bags all around. My father and I sleeping in the cabin of the truck. It snows right on the edge of the cliff, right there. A strong wind blows. Its gusts are so wild that if the brakes of this heavy truck would suddenly let go, we'd simply crash into the abyss right ahead. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I watched over the truck. It was my responsibility. I even remember thinking it was cruel of my father to park us there. But I didn't say a word. I was afraid he'd think I was a coward. So it's Mother taking the picture. Father and I, in front of a magnificent view. We're standing at the edge of a cliff. Me in front, my hand in my father's. I'm always standing at the edge of a cliff, with my hand in my father's hand. I'm on the edge of a cliff, therefore I am. I take a risk, therefore I am. Perhaps this is what was passed on to me by father and his generation. As a boy, he'd had a very traumatic experience. He wouldn't mention it much, but enough for me to understand that when he was 16, he had to go look for the pieces of his friends' bodies in the orange groves. They had been lynched. Arabs attacked them during the riots, and that was the source, the reason for his preoccupation with this particular kind of catastrophe, the Arabs. He'd actually foam at the mouth when he spoke of Arabs and the Jewish people. It looked scary. Most of my life I would avert my eyes so as not to see him at that moment of this ugly fear. But he couldn't help it. I'd gone with him to a garage to have my car fixed, and he stood around waiting, talking. There was this boy working there. He came near us. A young Arab, no more than, 11, 12 years old, doing something next to us. He had to do something next to us. As this child came near us, my father began to suddenly speak out of the corner of his mouth so the kid wouldn't hear him. I didn't dare confront most of these fears before he died. The sound of the Arab language, the smell of the villages. All these things became this sweeping, deep-seated fear. Visceral almost. Until not that long ago. Sometimes I leaf through my father's letters from his British mandate prison. He was imprisoned by the British as a freedom fighter. In these letters, I find many texts that sound like things that could be written now by Palestinian freedom fighters. It's a little country with a big mustache. For my 9th birthday, I got an air rifle from my father, and my arms weren't strong enough to break the barrel. It was an awful disgrace. My father didn't have a son, so it was I who got the rifle. Every Saturday I had to lie on my belly on the back lawn and do shooting practice, till I learned how to shoot. But I never managed to break the barrel, and he had to do it for me, and every time this was a fresh disgrace. I just didn't have enough strength in my arms, which my father called your twigs. There's this photo from 1950. It's a close-up of a cleft, a kind of cranny. The bottom's not visible. It could be a real crevice between two boulders. The top of the picture shows the top of these two boulders with this cranny in between, and a young man in khaki shorts, of course, and hiking boots, 1 foot planted on each boulder, so he's actually straddling the two peaks. He's bending forward and down, and from his outstretched arms hangs a little 4-year-old girl, me. In the picture, you see a kind of smile, and it's hard to tell whether this is a forced or a disciplined smile or just... My body is clearly cringing, legs slightly flexed, and the arms are soft, very, very, very extended. And he holds my hands in his own. And that's it. I'm hanging over an abyss. As long as he keeps holding, all's well. The photographer is obviously my mother. I never let go. I never walk out on relationships. I don't leave places. It happens to me, but I don't let go. Of course I can't let go. Look what could happen if I do. The depth of the impact. Not far from where we lived was a water tower. One of those water towers you'd see in pictures of Israel of the old days. He would come home from his army base and take me to the water tower. He'd tie my belt to his, I'd be behind him, and we'd climb the iron ladder all the way to the top of the tower. It was high, at least 3 stories. There, on top of the tower, we'd spend time together. He'd show me places far away, he'd tell me stories, we'd play. Years later, he used to tell people, proudly and incredulously, that one day, after a full meal at the base, he leaned back, took a deep breath, and bats! The belt to which he used to tie me to climb the tower just fell apart. I was 3.5, 4 years old. Seated at the Passover table, next to me sat an old Jew with a long beard. He asked me in his diaspora Hebrew, "Tell me, little girl, are you a Jew?" The story goes on proudly that I stood up and declared with great conviction, "No, I'm not a Jew, I'm an Israeli." I remember myself 12 years old, just having arrived in the States. I knew that on the next day I'd have to introduce myself in school, tell the class who I was. I actually remember this moment in my body. I recall standing in the bathroom in front of the mirror alone and practicing saying, "My name is Tal, and I'm a 1.5 years older than my country. And my father loves archaeology, and he was a freedom fighter, and I come from Israel, and in Israel, and I proceed to tell about Israel." I realized that I have no biography. I came from such a place where identifying yourself with the collective is so crucial it actually becomes a religion. Godless, but religious. The tribe, the collective, the nation. This heroic Zionism that is so wonderful because it offers Jews a new identity, so they could finally stop being these slimy and diasporic and these obnoxious and weak. And this contradiction was delivered to me by the two most important people in the world. This father-mother, this couple God. That Jewish is yuck, and that Jewish is the only legitimate existence. Double message. For years, any talk at home about the human race would begin and end with what is done to Jews, what those monstrous anti-Semites do to Jews. It colored everything. It colors capabilities, will. It colors even the will to will, if that's even legitimate to have a will. The worst contradiction of all of them is the issue of truth and falsehood. Truth and falsehood. Lying, at that time, was considered a major crime, almost as bad as fear, but not quite. The lies that I and my generation were fed, how much of it was just plain cruel. And since I was so trained to be such a part of the collective, that just became the foundation of my identity. My rage at this deceptiveness, which was forced on us as we were formed, is just enormous. I'd like to put this all inside barbed wires, be myself inside those barbed wires that touch my flesh, like some castigation for something that I didn't do, but for which I feel responsible. Knowing that you can say no, that you can refuse, you can go to jail, you can go to an army shrink, you can do plenty of things and not do what every particle in my body resents doing. Perhaps with a situation as it is today, with my being so involved, with so much guilt and shame and so eaten up inside, I can't speak about this without crying. I weep with shame because I'm such a coward. It's embarrassing to be a 57-year-old woman and speak of this juvenile rebellion I'm in now. Meaning, I still haven't detached myself from this collective. This might be the starkest symptom of this disease called militarization of the soul. This is deep militarization.